Well, let's show you that. I noticed a book there. Let me get out of here. I was playing around with the things there. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good,
Yeah. I
uh,
mean, I feel
day
like
to
we're
day.
all sort of good. We're like in this weird, like we're good because we know we're so grateful for what we do have. And so we almost feel guilty talking about all of the stuff but I mean, like, but good is sort of a relative thing where like there's so much impact on, I know, you and me and all of us. So I don't know. So tell me what's really going on in your head.
No, I mean, I always do.
I know.
It's just day to day. I had to think about how I'm feeling today. I'm feeling good today. And a lot of that is because I've been able to get a lot of information and resources, non-capital resources to our founders this week.
Yeah.
I felt really proud of that work that the team has done this week. And so, being able to do something and not feel like you're just sort of paralyzed by that is super helpful right now.
Yeah. I mean, how are the founders? Like, how's the overall sentiment? I mean, I've talked to a couple of founders. Like last week, one founder lost 13 million in promised funding. So it's like those sorts of things are like what do you say? I mean, so that's why I think like this non-capital like help and resources is like critical because we,
Yeah.
we also need that. So how are your founders doing?
It runs the gamut. We have more than 100 founders, so some of them are fine. Some of them have recently raised, or they have their revenue pipeline is just good and it's okay, and they had stuff in the bank, and
Yeah.
some of them are just they don't know what to think. They're sort of in the middle, and they're okay for maybe 3 to 6 months financially, but just wondering what's going to happen. Will this take a year and a half to fully recover from at least the first wave, right, of the economic toll? And then there are some who are just really hurting. And I know that there are some people who had layoffs, things like that. At Backstage, we had a couple of layoffs ourselves. I mean, we were hit fast and oof. And so the good thing is that we're able to relate, and a lot of founders are able to relate to past experience.
Yeah.
So that no
Yeah.
one, I haven't had anyone so far in our portfolio completely spinning out as
Hmm.
far as
Okay.
as far as
That's
I know,
good. I
because
mean,
they're
it's
sort of
just, I think which is great because I mean, I think a lot of the mentality right now is like, let's weather this storm. Let's try and figure this out. But I mean, yesterday I was in this meeting where a bunch of scientists and economists and people like from healthcare, and we did this thing where we had to look at basically like a prediction market type of thing to see when do we think that we're going to be at the end of this, like when do we think this is going to start tapering down. And the amazing thing is there was no consensus. It was everything that ranged from late summer, mid to late summer, all the way to late fall. And then there was also sort of nuance around the cyclical nature of this, that we would sort of reintroduce slowly and then sort of step back out, reintroduce, step back out, that would sort of last all through the fall. And but even just like last week compared to what we were thinking last week, I mean, it's just been so like monumental in terms of these predictions, and no one really knows, and we're all sort of trying to like do the numbers around it, but
yeah.
we just um we don't know. I mean, and I gotta tell you, like when you first texted me to say like, what are you thinking about South by, right? Like I remember you texting me and I was like, Arlan, she is like overthinking this. It is gonna be fine. Like no one is gonna, like there's no way that they're gonna cancel this. Like I'm still gonna go until they formally cancel it.
Yeah.
And I remember you were just like, I don't know, I'm just feeling like that. And and like I don't know, like there's just so, and then like my family, we go to Taiwan every year. And I was thinking, like, at one point we were like, oh no, we're not going to be able to go to Taiwan. And one of my friends was like, it's actually going to be better in Taiwan than it is in the US. And I'm like, no way. This, like, summer, I don't know what's going to happen. So it's like all of these little things that now looking back, I don't know. I don't know if other people were sort of like me, but I don't know how you called it.
A lot of people were. Yeah, a lot of people were like you, and even today, top of April, there's some people that in different parts of the country.
Oh, but now I'm like all in. Like I'm wiping down groceries. I'm like, I mean, all of that. But I do remember when you texted me that you were like, you know, I'm not sure. Like, I'm not sure what to do. What are you thinking? I'm sort of leaning towards canceling. And I'm like, no.
That was like March 2nd or 3rd, because I was in Austin at the time, recording my book. And so I know exactly when that was March 2nd or 3rd. And I was going to make a decision within 24 hours. And people were still like, of course they're not going to cancel South by. And I was like, they need to cancel South by. Because I think it was a combination of two things. One is that I as you know, I fist bump. I have been for 2.5 years.
Yeah.
I'm super aware of people's proximity to me and of germs and things like that. Yeah. And so when people are sneezing and coughing in the streets, I notice it anyway. And I was in Austin a week before South by was supposed to begin, and everybody was out and nobody had any clue to what was going to happen. And even with the few people around, they were still there. I still felt unsafe because it was people not coughing the right way and sneezing the right way. And I said, I can't see this with 400,000 new people introduced.
I mean, they made the right call. I mean, that would have been like blood on there. I mean, like if they had run it, and I mean, they made the right call. They had to.
It was at the time, it was an impossible decision to make, and even so, they made the right call. So it was a combination of that, and it was also just I always feel very grounded and rooted into what's going on, and I also have like this little spidey sense sometimes. I'm just like a little bit earlier, and I'm just like, this is probably going to be wacky pretty soon. I don't think anybody could have predicted 10 million people going on unemployment, how quickly things happened, deteriorated and everything. So it's just, it's like an hour by hour thing, but you know.
So how are you, like, okay, so now what are you doing now in terms of, I saw that you guys unfortunately had to cancel your tour.
Well, we turned it into a virtual tour, and that took a lot of effort and time on our part to make that really work, especially because, again, we did it a few days before other people started doing that or made that announcement. And then we were like, okay, we're still going to be fine. I was still at the time, like, I'll still do New York and LA, you know, it'll be fine because it'll be May.
Yeah. And by then, like May, everything should be good.
But I said, you know, we're going to keep an eye on it just in case. And then I lost in about 72-hour period about $300,000 in personal capital from speaking events being canceled. And we still tried to make it work. And then we were like, you know what? Let's just have it be one day for 6 hours, a really cool summit, virtual summit. Let's do that. So we were super excited about that. Have our sponsors and we have everybody buying tickets. And then we were like staring down the barrel of April and saying, I don't even know if I can predict 2 weeks from now when a good day is to do this, because 30 or 40% of our ticket holders are in New York. So, you know, and I'm getting text messages from people who are are on my social or on my book launch team. They're in the hospital right now, some of them.
Oh, no.
You know what I mean? Like, this is like affecting people like right now on the front lines right now.
Oh my God.
So to be able to think, okay, April 21st, we'll just do a date. I just didn't feel comfortable being able to do that and put all of our efforts into that. So I said, let's postpone it indefinitely. We'll refund everybody's money. And then what we'll do is we'll do pop-up event, like pop-up conversations.
Uh-huh.
So with people like legal people with Mark Cuban, et cetera, but we
Uh-huh.
can schedule them a day in advance or 2 days
Uh-huh.
in advance, just so that we can keep an eye on it. And that's what we're going to do for the time being. We're
But
kind
they're
of,
going to be virtual
yeah,
pop-ups?
all virtual pop-ups.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we had to postpone it, but we can, have this soft landing and talk to Mark Cuban for 45 minutes and get his take on things exclusively. Or we can have, we have some things coming up that I'm gonna experiment with,
Mm-hmm.
and be
Mm-hmm.
flexible and knowing that it may not happen, because you want to walk that fine line between providing distraction, information, entertainment, community, comfort, all of those things for your
Mm-hmm.
audience, while
Mm-hmm.
at the same time reading the room
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
not putting stuff out there where it's like, hey, we're not going to even acknowledge what's going on. You have to do a little fine balance of that, in my opinion. And so that's what we're going to be doing for the next several
Yeah.
weeks.
I mean, what I'm sort of struggling with right now is that, so I'm struggling with the content that's sort of out there, and it almost seems like there's just so much now, right? Like everybody at once is trying to put stuff out online, right? And it was like, it's this weird sort of paradox where before there was so much that was inaccessible to certain people, right? Like it was like, oh, we have like these like secret little conferences. We've got this that you got to like travel to, and it's not in your city, or you got to do this. And now all of a sudden, it's like in the spirit of this, everyone is putting out webinars and sessions and Q&As and all this stuff, and it's all over Zoom. And I feel like we're sort of, the novelty has now worn off. And we're all like, okay, how many more of these are we going to do? And it's also like, how do we curate what we're going to listen to, what we're going to watch? And we're simultaneously like fighting with people who are just going to binge watch Netflix, people who don't have the time to do this because they've got kids at home, or they're dealing with, and so it's like, I'm sort of struggling with this aspect of different people are experiencing this virus in different ways. Some are experiencing it like difficulties physically, some emotionally, some spiritually, some professionally. And so I almost feel like there needs to be a way for us to help people curate all of this stuff that's out there in a better way.
Mm-hmm.
So that it's not like, that we're randomly, like, even an example of this is like, I'm like, okay, I got to keep exercising. I haven't exercised in like 2 weeks. And there's all of these things that are now online on YouTube. But then it's like, what do I search for? What workout am I going to do? Am I going to do kickboxing? Am I going to do yoga? Am I going to do, like, there's just too much that's accessible now, which is so opposite from the problem we had before, which was like, no one has access to these things, these special things that others have. And there's this disparity. So I don't know. What are you doing in terms of, what's your thinking on this?
The entrepreneur in me tells me to tell you, you should talk to like a workshop or some sort of brain trust of 4 or 5 of your students, and you all should put together something and that does curate, and some people will look at it. I mean, that's all we can really do, because it's like what they say, water from a fire hose.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think if that's kind of agitating you, that's probably where that energy can go, is to create the thing that you want to see. That would be really cool. I think also it's important to remember, let me just make sure that my Wi-Fi is good. I think it's also important to remember that, like you said, everybody is experiencing it a different way, but also everyone is receiving information at a different speed, at a different quality. So whereas we are seeing every webinar there is to see, we're getting sent things, everything, every topic, everything, it is mostly because you and I are already signed up for all of these different people, all these different trade things, and have that access and spend a lot of time researching on a day-to-day basis. I did a Instagram live last night, and there are a lot of people who were just learning about certain things with the stimulus package, and just asking very one-on-one questions because they just heard about it, because they're not necessarily, as a gig worker or as someone who is, you know, whatever, they're not necessarily getting all the information. So the way that I try to think about it is, can I be a conduit and a translator? And that kind of keeps the spirits high, the morale high for myself, because you can get overwhelmed with it. I mean, it's so true. There's so, like, my whole inbox is just full of webinar. The word webinar has never been used more ever. So it's like, you know, some of it is take yourself away from it. Some of it is close it down, shut it down. My mom is doing a 5-day no news thing.
Smart.
Because she's like, it's just so overwhelming and scary. For 5 days, I'm just not gonna watch the news. I'll pick it back up next Monday, right?
Yeah.
So you can do that with those detoxes. I think also repurposing it and making sure that, like, giving yourself purpose, like repurposing yourself as, what can I do that maybe I am privileged to be able to do? And you are, like, for yourself, you're such a great communicator. You're such a great researcher. You take it through the algorithm and you put it out in a way that people can understand it. And that, to me, is the same thing as, that's why you want to curate. That's why you're drawn to that, because that is very natural to you. For a lot of people, they would look at the board and just say, I don't even know where to start. Like, what do I do? And so I think it's a combination of things, and like being good to yourself, and like not having all the answers, and like knowing that that's the case. That's a little hard for people who are strong under pressure. It's like, oh, I don't know what to say to the person and help.
Yeah, totally. So you and I were supposed to do this session at South by Southwest.
Yes.
And it was supposed to be on turning adversity into advantage, and how you are like the protagonist of my book. I mean, like, you are you quintessentially, yes, you are like the quintessential example of someone who has been able to do that, who has been able to flip these sort of obstacles and stereotypes and perceptions and flip them around in a way that is very authentic and real and resonates. And so, you know, I guess, like, when we sort of talked about doing this, number one, it's like, what can we do? You and I should, like, we can brainstorm, like, what can you and I team up on that won't be a huge ask of your time or a huge ask of my time, but that, like, we are naturally situated to do together, right? Like, that's sort of one thing. And then the second thing is, like, you know, do we want to do something for, I don't even know, like, South by just sort of sent us this email, and they were like, if you're going to do something that's on the same topic and you're going to do it together, like, do it, and then we'll sort of broadcast it. But I don't know, are you doing this for any of your other sessions, and what does that sort of look like?
No, but what I want to do is, we can continue talking right now, and let's send this to them, like, because it's going to be helpful.
Whole conversation?
Yeah, it's going to be helpful.
All right, hello.
If they don't use it, then we'll get it out another way. But I think it'll be helpful.
Okay.
And then, hey, I mean, your curation idea is pretty interesting. You're really good at, like, that part of it, and maybe you can get someone to help you with the ins and outs of it. And then I'm really good at, like, promoting it and amplifying it. And maybe it can be like a resource that we partner on to get out to people, because you're right. And it would have to be a way that it could be updated kind of on its own without.
Yeah, I was wondering too, like, one of the things that you and I sort of talked about, like, a long time ago was, you know, there's all of these sort of book clubs, right? Where they have, so like, one of them is, you know, Dan Pink and Adam Grant have sort of their next big idea sort of club, right? And what you and I sort of chatted about a little bit was, like, there's not really books that are like a book club for people who speak our language, for people who are like, I'm aspirational. I keep hitting the same wall over and over and over again. And, like, what can I do to sort of, like, what are the books that are specifically targeted for people who are trying to achieve success, but kind of keep feeling like they're knocked down? Or what are the resources, or where do I go to sort of learn about, specific topics that, because the next big idea club is really targeted towards like CEOs, people who are trying to like innovate and do like organizational change and those sorts of things. And not to say that we don't talk about those sorts of things, because we do.
I think we do them. I think we do them. That's the
and
we do those things
yes.
in our day to day. And again, it's about how do we translate that to another audience.
Yeah, and I feel like what you and I have always cared about is like the people who are underestimated, right? You talk a lot about like being underestimated. I mean, you have t-shirts, you have gear, like the underestimated piece. I talk a lot about disparities and inequality and sort of this notion of, both of us are like, how do people as individuals feel empowered in this, like, we know that there's this myth of meritocracy. We know that there's a myth of meritocracy. We know that structures need to change, systems need to change. But what's happening is that we've been talking about this for a really long time. And they're either not changing in the ways that we intended them to, or they're changing but much more slowly than we thought they would, or they're not changing at all. And so how do we empower people within an imperfect system to take the bull by the horns or take the reins themselves and empower themselves to do this? And it's more than just like having algorithms that do more equitable hiring or putting more women in executive positions, because that all will help, right? That definitely helps. But we still need to empower people, even while all that's happening, that we're not just saying, okay, just wait. There will be algorithms that will help. There will be people, there will be mentors, but that like as individuals, people feel empowered to do this, right? So what are the sort of tools? What is the reading? What's the, like, I feel like that's something that you and I both care very deeply about. And I'm wondering, and I'm totally just brainstorming here, like, what if you and I had I don't know, just as like one example, like a book club, and every month we picked one book that we then facilitated a Q&A about, right? Like we did some sort of like an Instagram live, or we did a Zoom sort of session webinar, right? Another webinar, but we had like, we would sort of, again, curate something, either a book or an article or some sort of a movement or something, some topic that then you and I, like once a month, we would sit down and we would have like the academic research sort of point of view. We'd have the on the ground, like, here's how you think about it. Here's sort of, so we have your perspective, which is very much like, I've lived this. Here's what I've seen. My entrepreneurs, the entrepreneurs I've found, like I've put money into, have put resource into. Here's what like I see as that sort of perspective. Here's the stories. And then I sort of talk about like, here's what the research suggests. Here's what we how we make sense of this, both cognitively and emotionally, and sort of, and then we just have like this be an open forum where we suggest one thing, and then people kind of come at us with questions around like how-tos, tactics, strategies, like how do we think about this in our own lives? And it's just sort of like a 1 hour like chat where you and I are chatting and people sort of, I don't know, that's one sort of idea.
Here's what I think to that. And I have, look how many copies I have. I bought like 3 copies of your book. Here's what I think. Your idea. This is April. This is May. And then the June through December is a book that we each choose. I love it. I love the idea.
That could be fun too. Like we alternate, like each month
Yeah.
So I pick 1 month, you pick 1 month,
Sure,
I pick
sure.
1 month, something
So
like that.
let's start in April. We'll choose a
people can
date.
send us people can send us suggestions of books and articles as well. Like maybe they've read something and they really want to ask something, or they've been
Yeah.
or they feel dumb asking some question
Well, how
that
about this? I mean, what we can do is in advance, we can let people know what book we're going to be talking about. And then that'll give them plenty of time. And I think what you've proposed is a lot of content, and it'll be very helpful. We can do it live. We'll invite people to it. We'll make it on demand, video and audio as well afterwards, so people can check it out. And of course, after April and May, whatever we choose, we'll try to get the author on as well. So it'd be
that would
fun.
be awesome. And then
Yeah.
you and I just have this. We have our book club. We need to think about what we call it, because it needs to be bigger than the next big idea book club. It has to be
Think
like,
about it. How about we think
yeah.
about it? Like, I love the idea. Our next step should be a name and a date for the first one, because if we don't do that, we won't move forward.
That's right. Let's do it. And we should ask people, if people have suggestions for names of what this book club should be, let's do it. And these are going to be books that are just really accessible to people, that have meaning, and that make people, that you can be vulnerable and you can be real, and you can not feel like you're reading something that, you're not reading a book that you feel like you should like, or you should know about. Like, we're not talking about like the Odyssey or like Shakespeare or whatever. Like, these are real accessible sort of books. So
sure. Yeah, I think it's a great idea. And I think it's bandwidth wise, it's something I can pull off. So
that's awesome. And I think the theme, again, it's like being underestimated, disparities, like how do you sort of empower yourself? So
yeah, I think that's a great idea.
And we could have announced it at South by, but
Well, I mean, yeah, we would have announced it on stage because you're telling me about it. But yes, I think it's great. And again, no matter how it's told, we'll do it. I mean, I think it's a great idea, and it's something we can do. I mean, I've been talking to a couple of major companies about doing a book club for them, but I like the idea of us just doing it ourselves, and then maybe they can back it. So
yeah, or they can back it, and I can, both of us can try and bring in sponsors who then
that's what I mean.
Will sponsor the books and then sort of send it to our lists, our mailing lists, our people.
That'd be cool. We can figure something out, and it can be super indie too. I like the idea of that. We'll just see what happens organically.
Yeah, I like the idea. I like the piece of it, absolutely. So that's more us. So so all of you out there who think that Harvard Business School professors are stuffy and full of themselves.
Yeah, I mean, it would be cool. It'd be like having you're getting like a lecture from an Ivy League school professor, and then you're also just gonna get like me telling you how it is out in the streets.
Yeah, and we can sort of like, it's like it's like we're freestyling. Like I do my like sort of thing and then pass it to you, and then you pass it back to me.
Yeah. We'll have slides and everything.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah.
Really?
Because I'm learning how to make slides, so I'm gonna have slides everywhere all the time. It'll be fun. Don't worry. It'll be fun.
Okay. Well, once you said slides, I'm like, oh, Arlan.
I used to have slides in my presentations, and all they would be basically are different screenshots of different General Hospital scenes and how I relate those characters to it.
All right. Well, you just send your slides over to me. Let me spiff them up for you. And like,
these are gonna work. No, you have your slides, and they can be spiffed. And I have my slides.
Am I allowed to use General Hospital on my slides?
If you want to, like, you got to bring it though. You got to really.
Yeah, but maybe I'll bring more. I feel like I feel like I need to bring more of like The Office, like more of like Chachos, like I feel like that's like more my.
Yeah, you gotta be real. You gotta do your.
All right, so mine is like, okay, so let's see, like The West Wing is like one of my all-time favorites. Okay, so I just gotta find my
By the
like
time this is
my,
over, this is just going to be slides of different television shows and the
and
books.
how we just draw linkages between. I mean, that could be part of it too. Like it could be one month we decide like here's the episode that you need to watch, and then we're gonna talk about this
Yeah, or
episode.
show. Yeah, that's true. That's true. I like starting with our books, though.
Yeah.
That's smart. Let's do that, and then we'll.
Okay.
There are some books. I mean, even on my shelf, this is part of my shelf. There's anything on here could qualify. So yeah, we'll definitely do that. I dig it. And
How are you? How is your? I mean, like, just I'm pretending that we're just, you know, you and I are just catching up to some extent. So how are you in terms of bandwidth? I mean, like, how are you feeling in terms of like
I mean, I'm always super like my schedule's always stacked on purpose, and I always give myself time to have a break. I always make sure that, but when I'm in production mode and productivity mode, I'm there. And I had kind of prepared myself for the past few months to be on a 6-month road tour while running backstage my fund. So I had all of this in my head. So actually, I mean, it's an interesting question because I am very packed productivity wise. I have something every day on my calendar that is something that's going to be impactful. But I have these pockets where I can make things work because I'm here and I, you know, in these 4 walls, and so or within these 4 walls. So the most important thing while being self-quarantined and self-isolated is to still build in that time for, like you said, exercise, some sort of exercise, build in time. I exercise more than I ever did now because there's something to do. And then build in time for like actually turning off the news cycle and the seriousness of it, and actually finding joy in things, and watching frivolous television or movies, and I'm learning a ton. I'm also taking some courses and learning about things. And I watched a freight logistics webinar for an hour just because I saw it. I was like, this is interesting. Like at 8 in the morning, I'm like learning about it while I'm checking my mail, and it was really interesting. So I was like trying to fix our stationary bike in the living room, and my wife walked in, and I'm like, you know, all mechanic, have all these pieces out. And she's like, I've never seen you ever do anything like this before. What's going on? And I'm like, hey, I for 35 years, I had to figure stuff out. I was always poor. I was always doing stuff. You've just seen me on the road and kind of speaking and doing all that. But I can certainly get a YouTube video open and try to learn.
Yeah, I mean, this is the time. This is the time to learn those sort of things. I mean, how much of this, like, so how much of this, like, what percentage do you feel like this is sort of just a bummer versus what percentage of you is trying to, I mean, I don't know the right way to ask this, but like, how down do you feel about this?
It goes in waves because I mean it really is hitting me very personally. I don't think
in terms of your talks, your book launch. I mean, your book is.
I mean, it's not just that. It's not just that I had to lay off 3 of my closest friends a week ago.
I don't want to ask who's gone because I don't even want to ask because I know your team. And
so I'm telling you, it's been really tough. I have my mom and my brother are both having health issues that are not related to coronavirus. You know, had other family stuff going on. It's very here, and I'm feeling it. But I think it comes in waves. So today is a good day. Yesterday was really tough. But all throughout it, what I'm doing is I am just finding ways to feel useful. And if I can feel useful, if I can keep myself going to that next step, that has always helped me. I said in my, I spoke at MIT virtual event yesterday, and I said, if we can bend and not break, we will get stronger. So a lot of this is in bending and knowing that you're going to be close to your breaking point, but try not to break completely. And then coming back from that, springing back from that a little bit stronger each time. And I'm just taking my own advice and listening to myself.
Yeah, I mean, I love the bend not break piece. I mean, I've been just thinking about it in terms of like, we just need to weather this storm. Like, we need to
Yeah.
just hunker down, go back to the basics, right? What are those basic sort of things that we really need?
Hmm.
And if we can really focus in on those basic things that we need, which whether it is like making sure that we are staying physically strong, like emotionally, or in terms of like our the interpersonal relationships that we care about the most. Like forget all the other sort of stuff. Like we're sort of in crisis mode right now where we're not in this like trying to grow. I mean, like right before this, so many of the companies that I was working with, it was a lot of things around how do I grow my company? How do I scale? How do I stay nimble? While I continue to pursue new kind of opportunities? And now all of a sudden it's like, you can't be thinking about that, right? One founder was saying to me, but like last month I made 15,000 in profits, and so far I have zero this month, right? And it's like you have to forget that. You have to go back to like, what is the core product? What is it that I can still do? And where is it that I can still add some sort of value or be helpful in some sort of way that you're kind of saying. So I think all of that rings really true. I think what's hard too though is like when I think about things like we did have so much momentum. Like all of us had so much momentum going into this. Like things were starting to build, things were starting to look like they were, and then all of a sudden it's like that momentum was just totally turned off. And so it's like not only were we going, but then it's like, oh, we have this backlash because there was so much momentum
Or your
building.
whiplash.
Yeah, we have
Yeah.
like this whiplash.
Yeah.
And what I think a lot, and so much hard work went into that momentum. And so, I mean, I've been thinking about you a lot because you and I had like texted about recording the audio versions of our books
Yeah,
and
we
how
were
you
both. Yeah.
recorded it in a studio called, like you recorded in a studio called Arlan, right?
Yeah, spelled differently, but it has my name, and I thought it was just a perfect. And that was the last time I was out. Like I
I know, but
come
it's
back
like
home.
all
Well,
of
yeah,
this
I
hard
mean,
work.
what do you think? Because I have the book coming out May 5th. No one, including the publisher, knows how it's going to do because we're in the age of Corona. But you already had your book come out right when you were getting started. So you put up a graph on your Twitter a few days ago that showed how your sales were like this, and then it looked, kind of the. So talk to me about that. Like, what's that really
Yeah.
been like?
I
And
mean,
then
I pretty much on both Twitter and Instagram, I pretty much just said, I said like, if only this was the trajectory of COVID-19 rather than the trajectory of my book sales, which because it was this huge sort of spike, and that's the momentum that I was sort of talking about. And then all of a sudden you see it just kind of go like completely crashed. And what was hard was that I had in the span of a week 16 events, 16 book events that were all through sort of April and May. But in that 1 week, all 16 of those got canceled. And but before that, and as a professor, like a lot of my job is being out, like kind of talking and doing in-person sort of thing, like teaching, that kind of thing. And so when that sort of all got canceled, my natural sort of tendency isn't like podcasts and sort of things that like a lot of the people in media sort of do. It's more of the teaching. So that was a huge bummer. I mean, it was a really big bummer to kind of see. But at the same time, I'm like, I don't know what it would be like. Like imagine my book was going to come out in April, like April 7th or something. People have books that are coming out this week.
yeah, they do. Yeah.
And I don't, I don't know. And so I've been thinking of you because I'm like, you put so much work into this. You have an amazing book, an amazing story. So much hard work went into this. And it was, I don't want to say derailed because it hopefully won't get derailed. Hopefully this will be something that for good or for bad that you sustain this, but like it is like one of those things where like there's nothing you can do about it, but at the same time, like how are you coming to terms? Like did you just like let yourself cry for 1 hour and then you're like, okay, I'm back to work now?
I promise you, I know this is going to sound weird to most people, but I promise you, when I sat in that hotel room in Austin and I was making the decision about what I was going to do next, and at the same time, over a 72-hour period, I lost $300,000 worth of speaking wages, income, in one fell swoop over multiple speaking groups. I looked down the barrel of like like I'm supposed to have all these speaking things for the book and sales, and I really just kind of like by myself, I was like, huh, okay. Like I kind of smiled, not in like a laughing at it way, because it's very serious, but I smiled in like, because the whole book
It's about
this
yes,
reality.
I know.
The whole book is about the last 5 years plus that I spent, or last 10 years that I spent
of like ups and downs,
of building backstage, homeless, on food stamps, with so many people saying no to me, and how I got through it. And I said, you know what? What this means is that so many people are going to relate to it, whether they hear it, whether they get to actually hear it and see it in May and the first few months of it that I wanted them to, you know, or if it's something that takes a while to catch on because people are dealing with other things. But people are going to find something that they find some solace in this book. And so I knew that there would be, my saving grace would be there, because I didn't have to be sad. I didn't have to mourn it. I could repurpose it, like I talk about in the book. I could repurpose the emotion and put that into an energy of, let me just try to figure out another way. I say, like, when things are at their worst, get creative. That's what I say in the book. Yeah. So I'm getting creative. I'm like, how can I make sure that people see and hear this online if they can't get a physical copy? What am I going to do to make that possible? So I am speaking on dozens of podcasts that we're recording last month and this month. And I'm just going to speak until my voice gives out, right? I'm going to just sell my story until it can't be told anymore. The second thing I realized was I've been preparing for this type of thing for a while, because I have done this type of thing before. So I'm going back to my entrepreneurial roots. I'm sending out books and t-shirts one by one by hand, putting them in the envelopes, writing out the things, sending them out like I used to do a few years ago when I was building the story that's in this book. And so I'm not mourning it. And I've also had a word with myself. And I've said that if, you know, we know what this is like. We kind of want to see it on a bestseller list, or we want to see someone write a cool review about it, or that. And I had certainly had those thoughts in mind. But I've talked to myself and said that if none of that happens, but a couple hundred people read the book, love it, get something from it, and then we have another chance some other time to really push it, I'm going to be okay with that, and I'm just going to go for it. Now, there's a part of me that feels like if I put a certain energy to it, I can make some magic happen. And I think I'm going to try. I'm going to try, because I think a lot of people will get something from it. And I'm not just saying it because I wrote it. I think a lot of people will get something from it because I get something from it. I'm comforted by it.
I think that's why you and I think that's why it's not about being on a bestseller list for either of us. It's that we really believe in the words that we wrote. We really believe in this. Like my book is, the title of it is Turning Adversity into Advantage, right? It's about how do you gain an edge. And so it's not about being bestseller. It's about the fact that we really want this message to be out there to every single person who has felt the way that we have felt, or that has experienced some sort of disparity or disadvantage or being underestimated. That we want to put these tools and these stories in the hands of people who we think would really gain something from it. And I think that's what's really hard, is that because of this, there's this piece of that's not going to get communicated, that not everyone who would have wanted this or would have benefited from this is going to have the opportunity. When Amazon shipments are delayed by 2 to 3 weeks, like
or more,
right? That delays the ability for people to sort of get this. And so that's why, I love every conversation we always have great conversations, because it's about how do we get this in the hands of people who is really going to benefit, who are really going to get value out of this. And so, to the extent that we keep thinking about ways to do this, it was the same thing when we wrote the Backstage Capital case. It was really around, there were so few cases with women protagonists. There were so few cases with protagonists that were people of color. There were so few cases where there were protagonists that identified as LGBTQ. And then it's like, how many cases are there where there's a protagonist that identifies with all three of those sort of things? And getting the message out to people who are going to be future leaders of the world. I just felt like we're doing an injustice to our curriculum and to education when we're not getting stories like yours and Backstage Capital out there. And so, I hope that people will, in business schools around the world, be teaching this case, and that you will be in classrooms around the world, that we can be showing videos of you and you telling your stories, and have your book be as part of the reading in schools throughout the world. So
great. That'd be great. And now I'll continue thinking of things for you, and I appreciate that, all of that, and I'll continue to think of some things. Ebooks and audio are going to be important right now. It's important that the Amazon workers, in my opinion, this is my opinion, it's important that they have a break, and that they're safe, and that they're not delivering things that they don't have to deliver that are non-essential. So I am 100%, as tough as it is personally, I am 100% behind them. And if it takes a while for books to get to people, that's okay. You can also support indie bookstores who were kind of, disadvantaged by Amazon over the years. And right now they're raring to go. They have the ability to do pickups, to do shipping, to do all types of things. And if I know that bookshop.org is a great one to go to. There's several, you can, all over the country and all over the world. Those are good alternatives right now, because they can get, in a lot of cases, the book to you in a way that Amazon can't, or faster. So I'm all for it. And when Amazon's back on its feet and we're super safe, we'll go there. And in the meantime, ebooks and Kindles and Audibles and all that's owned by Amazon, so they're going to get all of that traffic. So I think we just do a combination of what's important there. I also think yours could be really interesting. As how many chapters do you have?
I think 13.
13, like a 13 or 14 episode podcast that's released once a week. Maybe the audio, or maybe you talk about it once and you release it, because I know you don't do it normally.
I'm not a podcaster, Arlan.
Oh, you can't be. It's so easy. It's so easy.
That's totally you. I'm like, everyone watched How I Made My First Million. No, My First Million, right?
Your first million. Your first million.
Okay. Everyone, your first million is what the podcast. I'm not a podcaster.
Okay, I'll talk to you about it more. I'll talk to you.
Okay.
But yeah, I think that's what we do, is just we kind of repurpose, we kind of prepare for what's coming. It could be even longer, and we'll be here, and it's okay to not be great every day. because it's not sustainable to be okay every day. It just doesn't make sense. Or not
ever. I mean, it's not even just during this. I think people don't give themselves permission to not be okay every day.
Yeah. Any last things you want to? Any last thing you want to make sure everybody knows before we close out? Or I think we covered a ton of topics.
I think it's just stay strong, take care of each other, take care of yourself, but also take care of each other. It makes such a difference. I was talking to someone just earlier today about all of this. I mean, I've been very, very vocal about all of the anti-Asian hate that I've been seeing, and take care of each other. And the thing is too, you know, when you speak out on behalf, just a really quick thing here, just in terms of my observations from some of my research and some of the things that I've done, when I speak out on behalf of Black women, for example, for whatever reason, they listen more to someone who is not a Black woman advocating on behalf of a Black woman. It just makes that incremental extra difference. When someone who is a Black woman speaks on behalf of anti-Asian hate, it makes that incremental extra difference. If we all did that and spoke on behalf of issues that we care about for ourselves and others, putting ourselves in the place of other people, it's this exponential effect. And so we need to stick together. Like, we really need to stick together in these times. It can't be who has it worse, who's suffered more. We are all having trouble right now. Some people physically, some people emotionally, some people spiritually, some people professionally, some all four. But we have to stick together as like a humanity and go to bat for each other and really look out for each other. I mean, I look out for Arlan, and I am not, you know, and there's so much of Arlan and I are so different in so many different ways, and yet we have such a deep connection where we look out for each other. That's what we need to do on a grander scale. So that's sort of my last sort of words for everyone here.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to end it too, because that's important. You deserve the last word there. That's the way I can amplify you there, because it's just been very, very disturbing out in the world with the discrimination against people of Asian descent. It's ridiculous and hurtful.
I mean, when you see 2-year-olds and 6-year-olds getting stabbed and being blamed for this virus, you know something has gotten out of hand. So everything from the violence to the microaggressions, and microaggressions for whatever gender, race, ethnicity, class, religion, those microaggressions start to add up, and they become the violence and the aggression and everything else. So we need to be able to stop things at all levels. And so, you know, I think that's sort of one thing where we need to look out for each other as humanity.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for having this conversation, and we are I hope that people get to see it and enjoy it. And thanks, South by Southwest, if you're viewing this. And support the books.
And it's about time.
Aren't they so cute?
2 for 1.
All right. I will talk to you very soon.
Okay. Thanks, Arlan.
All right. Bye.
Bye.